Hi everyone, and welcome to the 6th annual CS Talks event series. On behalf of Corcoran Sunshine Marketing Group and Tishman Speyer, it is my honor to welcome you to 11 Hoyt. 11 Hoyt is a 57-story condominium tower situated where brownstone Brooklyn meets downtown Brooklyn. The development offers 481 studio to 4-bedroom condominium residences, spectacular views over Manhattan, New York Harbor, and brownstone Brooklyn, and over 55,000 square feet of exclusive amenities. I'm here today with an expert on 27,000 square feet of those amenities. I'm referring, of course, to our exclusive private elevated park, and I'm here with Stephen Eich of Hollander Design Landscape Architects. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, definitely. Very happy to be here.
So 11 Hoyt is this already iconic tower on the Brooklyn skyline, and you guys get this blank slate, this 27,000 square foot outdoor terrace. How do you even start approaching something like that? What was your vision for this project?
Yeah, with outdoor spaces in landscape architecture design, actually the more space that you have can almost create a more daunting task. We rely really heavily on our expert team within the project, all the way from the architects and the interior designers to the marketing and the kind of real estate experts that we have working with us on this project to really develop a set of program and amenities that we can offer on this outdoor space for the residents of the building. And so one of the things that we want to do on this project is to really consider every different type of user that would be out in this private park. So that could be, singles living within the building. It could be a couple. It could also be a young family with children. So really within the program that we developed, we hope to encourage everyone to maximize use of this outdoor space. It includes children's play areas for the young children. It has both a component that we consider more of a passive recreation. And the idea behind that is that this could be kind of sun lounging, laying out on the lawn, a conversation pit for seating and kind of small gatherings of a couple of friends. It also includes active recreation spaces. So that would be, kind of a lawn for lawn games. There's a raised fitness deck that's directly off of the gym. And then also the spa lounge off of the indoor swimming pool. And so we really worked very hard to kind of group like-minded activities together out on the outdoor space. So more of the active, loud recreation all happens in one zone, and there's a little bit more quiet, passive zone on the other side of the terrace. So once we develop this program, it's really all about using landscape and plantings and kind of all the beautiful aesthetic things that you think of in a garden to tie all this together.
Excellent. So you started talking about a little bit the relationship between indoor and outdoor spaces, and you're referring, of course, to the amenity suite designed by Michaelis Boyd.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about how you tried to foster a relationship between the indoors and the outdoors.
Right. Well, one of the great things about this project is we were brought on incredibly early in the process. So from the time that they were really conceptualizing and realizing an idea for the building, we were there to marry the landscape at a very early stage. Both the landscape to the building and then also the landscape to the interior elements that were happening. So looking at Michaelis Boyd development for the interior, we really were marrying like-minded activities outside. So from the private kind of social lounge that's happening on the interior, there's also the opportunity for an outdoor grilling and lounge pod on the exterior that really flows seamlessly from inside to outside. Also, the children's play area on the inside is another great example of this, where from the children's play area, directly adjacent to that on the exterior is the children's playground that was developed. And with both those spaces, there's even a play in the design where there's these cocoon-like elements on the interior, and then on the outside we have the realization of a caterpillar and then the final stage of a monarch butterfly in these large climbing structures. So it really not only direct relationship to one another in terms of proximity, but also in that design it kind of carries through both the interior and the exterior spaces.
Excellent. So Stephen, you are the head of Hollander Design's Urban Studio,
Yes.
which, how long has that been around? That's a relatively new discipline for you guys,
Yeah,
right?
so in terms of the life of the firm, we've been around for about 10 years in the Urban Studio.
Excellent. And what is the approach of the Urban Studio that makes it different to design for urban spaces versus a suburban space, maybe a rural space or a countryside?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting. The end goal is always to create this kind of effortless garden that people naturally understand and know how to use and can interact with. But there are a lot of other factors that have come into play whenever we're designing on structure, such as at 11 Hoyt. Weights are always a huge concern, making sure that the structure that we're building on top of can support all the additional soil, the weight of the trees, the paving, all of these elements. But then we also have to consider environmental factors such as high wind conditions that you can get the higher up you go into buildings, these kind of natural points of shade and low light conditions that can happen from adjacent buildings around the site. So all of these factors combined really create a challenge, one that I love trying to focus in on and figure out how to best adapt to provide maximum benefit for the project.
Excellent. And just out of curiosity, how much do trees weigh? This is something I've never thought about before.
It can vary greatly. We're doing some pretty large trees at 11 Hoyt, so those can be 2,000 to 3,000 pounds per tree.
All right, and soil, I imagine, is pretty heavy as well.
Exactly, yeah. So we not only do we have to consider the weight of the soil, but we also have to consider because soil is like a sponge, it actually absorbs moisture. We have to consider its maximum water holding capacity, what the weight would be, and that could be 100 to 120 pounds per cubic foot.
Wow, that's some serious weight.
Yeah, so we're looking at in any given area, we can have 700-800 pounds per square foot.
All right, excellent. So when you're talking about the weight of a tree and soil, also I would imagine that different types of trees or plants may have roots that need to extend in different directions. How do you accommodate for that when you're building on essentially a constructed platform?
Yeah, so again, because we were involved in this project so early, we were able to work with McNamara, the structural engineer, and the architects to really pinpoint exact tree locations and do what's called a slab drop. So basically where we'd have a normal roof slab that goes across, we actually create pockets within the slab that drop down to allow for that full soil depth that's needed for the trees.
Fascinating. Yeah. Which trees have the deepest roots?
It's interesting. So there's two types of different tree root systems. One's what's called a tap root, which grow basically kind of vertically. If you think about the way a tree grows above ground, that's the natural kind of root structure that happens below ground as well. And then the other trees have lateral roots that stay relatively close to the surface. In general, on rooftops, we tend to go with these kind of more lateral root systems just because they do allow it to spread out further, grow deeper, and also provides even more support and rigidity from kind of high wind events. But in terms of on site, I think probably the tulip trees that we have in the courtyard at the drive entry are going to have the deepest root systems, and those have a very extensive slab drop.
Of course, because those are part of a ground surface and not on an elevated slab.
Exactly.
So speaking of the site, you were just there, and we are, the building is very well under construction, almost complete. We have our first closings coming up, and our landscape is being installed as we speak. So what's going on site today?
Yeah, so as of this morning, we actually have been hoisting trees up onto the roof deck. The trees range in height from 14 feet up to about 25 feet on this roof deck. Later on this week, we'll be installing all the shrubs and the smaller perennials, and then really it's just kind of the finishing touches after that in terms of lawn and really making the space livable. So it looks great.
Excellent. So in a building like 11 Hoyt, you're going to have people living there year round, but of course these plants have different cycles. How do you guys approach designing something that's going to look great all year?
With landscapes, one of the things that we want to do is actually orchestrate the planting design in order to carry you from season to season. So we never want there to be a moment where the landscape isn't showing you or introducing you to something new. It could be spring blooms such as hellebores in the perennial level, the layer, or spring flowering redbud trees, which are another great tree that we have being installed in the landscape. As you move into the summer, it could be the introduction of hydrangea blooms and things that just slowly carry you and progress you through the season. Once we move into the fall, of course, the beautiful change in leaf color with the sourwood trees that we have installed, also the river birch trees. And then as we move into winter, we want to make sure that there's equal amounts of excitement. So that is a layer of evergreen shrubs and trees that are happening on the site. And then also some pretty unique characteristics of trees like river birch that have a beautiful peeling bark effect.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So you talked a lot about the utility of the space and the way that you specifically tried to meet the needs of various types of users. How do you marry a visual element with that? Are you kind of tailoring it around the type of space that people may be in, or actively trying to draw people to different areas?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we want to do, especially because square footage is a prime commodity in the city, is we want to make sure that we're utilizing and maximizing every square foot of a space. With a private park, there can be a kind of common core element like the lawn, which is the gathering lawn on the site. But then what we're doing is we're concentrating kind of like-minded program elements around that lawn at the center, just really to draw people throughout the site, like you said. It's always a combination of both creating outdoor rooms that people are going to use, like the barbecue pods and the social conversation area, and then these zones of transition. And these could be like the woodland walk that we have leading up to the fitness deck over on the western side of the site.
Do you have any favorite features of the outdoor space at 11 Hoyt?
Uh, I love it all.
Obviously.
But there's two things that come to mind that I'm really excited about. One of them is a children's playground and the play area outside. I wish that I was a kid in this building because it's really pretty unique and exciting. Like I said, it goes through the life cycle of a butterfly with the caterpillar and this large kind of monarch butterfly climbing structure in the middle. It is literally an imagination playground, and I wish that I was 8 years old. I might even try to sneak in.
I was going to say, we could probably make that happen for you if you wanted to come in for a few hours.
Yeah. And then the other space that I really love is what we've affectionately referred to as the Lower East Side. It's on the southeastern side of the roof deck. In this area, it's a large kind of social conversation pit area, and it's nestled within a grove of trees. So it's really going to feel like a pretty unique, magical spot that's just really calm and relaxing on the terrace.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite space as well. I love the idea of being in this very enclosed room, surrounded by shade trees and feeling intimate within the midst of the city.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Edmund Hollander, founder of Hollander Design Landscape Architects, wasn't able to be with us in person today, but he did join us via Zoom to answer a few additional questions. So Edmund, thanks so much for joining us. So Hollander Design has been around for 31 years at this point. Happy anniversary on your third decade. Tell us a bit about how the landscape design at 11 Hoyt speaks to what Hollander Design does so well.
31 years seems like it's a lifetime, and I still feel like I'm one of the young kids in this profession, hoping to be successful one day. The firm has kind of grown organically from what was originally my partner, Mary Ann Connolly, my mother, who ran the office, and a vicious Jack Russell. That was both fun to have in the office and was the most politically inappropriate dog in the history of Greenwich Village. So from mom, a dog, myself, and a partner, we have grown to offices in New York and Chicago, and have now probably completed several hundred projects, from large-scale residential gardens to the Kennedy Center in DC to 11 Hoyt, which may be one of my favorites of all times. And 11 Hoyt and the Kennedy Center came out of the urban studio at Hollander Design, which we started about 10 or 15 years ago, when Steve and Eich and Jeff Valentino from Chicago joined the firm. And that has allowed us to branch out and really deal with urban design projects, from Hudson Yards to 11 Hoyt to private penthouses, rooftops, terraces, things like that. And it's really added another level of expertise and another area where we can blend, I think, kind of the unique design traits that the firm is known for. And perhaps as important now as ever, one of the things that we're known for is the feeling of home. And obviously in the pandemic, the term home, the feeling home, the word home is so much more important than it had been. And I think we've been brought into many urban projects such as 11 Hoyt because the sense of home, when it's translated in a landscape, is an incredibly important emotional and meaningful thing to people. Whether it's a house in the country or an apartment in the city, the idea of when we come home, it's safety, it's security, it's serenity. And that's, I think, the hallmark of our work over the past 31 years.
In the past, you've spoken about what you call the 3 ecologies of landscape design. Can you tell us a bit about what those are and how we can see them coming to life at 11 Hoyt?
As our work developed, we noticed that in every project that we were looking at the natural ecology of a site, everything from in non-urban areas, hydrology and soils and groundwater, in urban sites, understanding the elements of the urban ecosystem. We were studying the architectural ecology. what are the buildings that our landscapes are relating to? How are people moving inside to outside? How are they living in these spaces? What do they look like? How do we translate the architectural elements of the building into the landscape? And so we were then blending architectural ecologies with the natural environmental ecologies. And finally, whether it's a single family home or a building like 11 Hoyt, we were then trying to understand our user groups. Who was living there? How were they living there? How were they using the spaces? What gave them a sense of joy? What gave them a sense of comfort? What gave them a sense of serenity? And so understanding the human ecological components in combination with the architectural ecological components and the natural ecology of the site started to become kind of a triad that we worked with in developing every design that we worked on. Every project is different. All the parameters are always different, but those elements in different levels of importance are impacting the design on every project that we do. At 11 Hoyt, I think we see that clearly in the interface between the interior and exterior spaces, how people are moving from inside to outside, how we are developing spaces outside where children can play, where there's a sun deck by the pool, where there are places for dining and families and the joy of eating and drinking together. Now in an outdoor space, which in the pandemic, it becomes even magically more important than we had thought pre-pandemic. But thinking about how people are using, so the human ecological component drove a lot of this. How were we going to create wonderful places for people to enjoy in the landscape in a multi-generational way? The natural ecological component of this was really, as we saw the importance of pollinators and natural landscapes and plantings for the benefit of the urban ecosystem and for the benefit of the people that live there, because people enjoy more, live better. A healthier landscape has been shown many times to promote human health and wellness. So if we can combine beautiful landscapes with human health and wellness, we've now created a landscape that is addressing the human ecology. It's addressing the natural ecology by being beneficial to butterflies and pollinators. And it's all relating architecturally in the forms that were developed to the building developed by Studio Gang. And I think it's really a remarkably successful expression of all the best of 11 Hoyt that is translated out into the landscape for people to be able to enjoy, because this is their home.
So the architectural design of 11 Hoyt is already iconic on the Brooklyn skyline. You have a 57-story tower in bright white concrete. You have these beautiful scallops with a play of light and shadow all day. How do you begin to respond to something like that when you're designing a landscape component of a project like this?
Well, it was an honor to be asked to be part of the team on such a remarkably excellent project. And Studio Gang's architecture was inspirational. The form of the building started to lead us to a somewhat more organic response in the landscape. And obviously we wanted to create outdoor rooms that extended the experiences that were being designed inside, so that gym areas and recreational areas and lounge areas, the flow from inside to outside started to become more seamless. And so, as with all of our projects, we wanted indoor spaces and outdoor spaces to have a real correlation and a real relationship to each other. The other thing we started to look at and think about was the fact that 11 Hoyt is actually on the migratory pathway of monarch butterflies. And that started to give form, this butterfly form, the entire life cycle of what a butterfly goes through to be able to come to life. But the form of the butterfly starts to be reflected in some of the play equipment that was designed specifically for this. The ecological needs of the butterfly are reflected in the plant material and planting design selections. It's not only a wonderful place for the residents to live, but it also has a larger level of importance within the ecology of Brooklyn and the ecology of the East Coast and the ecology of migrating pollinators, because 11 Hoyt, while being a wonderful place to itself, is part of the larger fabric and part of the larger community. And I think including it in the larger ecological community was a very important concept for us in putting the design of the landscape together.
All right, well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks so much to Edmund for dialing in, and thank you to all of you for attending CS Talks. If you have any questions about 11 Hoyt, please visit 11hoytbrooklyn.com.